Ah, man, this is also why, like, I do genuinely think that the game, I really do think that the game could do with two different versions. And people, or every time I bring this up,
Yeah,
people accuse me of splitting the player base, but I really feel that the original, when you first play EFT, that's its own very special thing, right? What do you,
sorry, I'm dying of thirst,
you
so I gotta get something. Okay,
so
yeah.
just
It's
rummaging
your
around in the
yeah.
background.
Welcome to ScavTalk, Escape from Tarkov podcast. We continue focus on developing the game, patch note analysis, data crafting, and Twitter drama. My name is Church. I'm one of your hosts. I am a video editor for a Tarkov YouTuber named Airwing Marine.
And I'm GigaBeef, a Tarkov YouTuber helping you guys improve the game that is Escape from Tarkov. And welcome back to ScavTalk this week in our drama week of Tarkov, which coincidentally, well, coincides pretty much with the middle of the wipe. You can tell when the middle of the wipe is because Twitter implodes upon itself.
Yes.
How's your week been, Mr. Church? How's it been going?
It's been going good. Staying somewhat busy. Um, did a pretty fun gameplay video. I've been wanting to ask you, do you watch other content creators? Like how often do you get to watch other Tarkov YouTubers? Is it
I
something you
watch
prioritize or is it even a thing? Yeah.
Yeah, so I would say I watch a good proportion of most of the content that comes out from most of the big people that isn't raid videos.
Okay.
I very rarely watch actual raid videos, very rarely, because it doesn't tell me anything new that I didn't already know. You know, it's like I
Mm-hmm.
know these guys good, and that's fine. And sometimes there's some like crazy moments, whatever. I actually saw a few people mentioning. I think this video that you're talking about, which is this the airing one that you
Yeah.
edited recently? And I've seen a few people saying that actually, so I'm that kind of piqued my interest, and it was in the back of my mind to go and have a look at it and see. And
Uh-huh.
some can be quite fun, but there's just so many. It's a good proportion of the Tarkov content that's out there. I would say I mean, it depends on. It's hard to make a measure because it depends on what you watch. The algorithm kind of serves you things that you want. But even
True,
not
true.
watching any, I still probably get served 50 to 70% raid style videos, like highlights style type videos, just because I think that there's, well, they're easy to make and there's just way more content of that type
Yeah.
than anything else, which is fair enough. That's fine. So the ones that I tend to listen to, even if I know all the stuff in there already, it's just like I'm interested to hear like other people's takes on things. Like I watched Rengar's like ammo tier list.
Oh, did you? Yeah.
Um, yeah, and there's like a couple of things like that. Like I already, I know all the ammos, right? I know what they all are. I know what they do. It's just like to hear from some dude who's like over level 70, like what he thinks,
Mm-hmm.
because that's useful. It's useful information. You like get some bits and pieces from here and there. And when people comparing different ammo, say, actually, this one a bit higher than this, and this one, no, I don't like this one very much. I've used this one, but I don't like it, which I thought was kind of interesting. Like, yeah, but I think the biggest takeaway from that for me was that because I never used the VSS and the Val, and he ended up putting SP5 and SP6 above SPP and BP just because of the plus recoil just makes them completely unusable. Now I've just not played with them that much, so it's a useful nugget of information to go in the back of the head. So that kind of stuff I do watch a lot of, um, but there's not necessarily a lot of that produced.
Yeah. That makes
So
sense.
that's it, really. Yeah, yeah.
No, I get that. I think I'm in the same boat. There was a point during the earlier white period where I was watching just a ton of landmark YouTube content, like just a ton. And yeah, I just sort of fell off watching gameplay vids, but I very much am, like if Jesse puts out a video like, this gun is underlooked or overlooked or something, and I'm like, "Oh, what gun is that? I gotta see." It's like, yeah, I get that. Like it's almost like you want to stay up to date and you also want to
Mhm.
have like those perspectives of from other people, So I totally get that. But
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I would be I asked because I'm really curious. I don't think we've ever talked about like I'm curious to hear your comments and critiques cuz yeah, just be interesting. I don't know. So I
What,
was
in terms
curious
of
if
the video that you made, the edits that you put
the
together?
editing, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, okay, yeah. I mean, I'll have to watch it and let you know what I think. Maybe we could talk about that next week. I'll have to
yeah.
write it down so that I'll watch it and then let me see. I'll write it right here. In fact, live. I'll watch the video and tell church next time. There you go. It's written. It's written down. It's in gospel now. It's
So even if
in
Airwing
stone
does
slate.
like a guide video, you'll watch it
Yeah,
sometimes.
probably. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah. If
that
it's
makes
like
sense.
hideout guide stuff, it's better. Like if it's like crafting guides, because sometimes because I don't keep a track unless you're making a video like that. Then I don't usually keep a track of like all the prices of all the things, and I don't actually have Tarkov Market. Funny enough, I'm probably one of the most likely people to have it, but I actually don't
Mhm.
have it, and so sometimes it's a bit laborious going through all the different items, keeping a track of like what's going up and what's going down in price. So I do listen to his rundowns of that. Um, I mean, it just depends on what people have produced, really. But as I said, I don't really like watching raid stuff just because I feel like it's all kind of the
That's
same
right, yeah,
broadly. It's
yeah.
it's difficult to get anything. I mean,
Once you've
sometimes I
played
will. Yeah, sometimes I will if it's maybe I don't know, a very specific like interchange raid or something
mm,
that I think, oh, it's like if I say interchange because that's like a map that I might be like, oh, I'm interested in learning how this plays out. But then I'm actually probably more likely to watch rather than highlights. I'm more likely to watch like the more like the longer ones, the full length ones to see like, okay, where did
kinda
he
like
spawn? How did he go?
Tulu.
Yeah, that kind of thing. So you get like even more context.
Mhm.
Some of the ones that are longer because I want to see like how people play the full thing. Kind of like watching the replay of someone else how they did the whole thing because you want to know the full context of how do they respond to all the sound cues as they were
Yeah,
entering and going towards the hotspots and whatever. Because that's the stuff that you lack if you don't play as much or you're not as experienced on like any individual map. So and those things you just get over time, and you can then kind of pick and choose individual raids that had action in them without actually having to go and do it yourself. Um, well, and you can like skip forwards through like the bits you don't want to watch, or whatever. So yeah, that's it really. I would say in terms of vids that I tend to watch, but I watch quite a lot. I tend to watch the ones that are more audio focused because there's quite a lot of the time that I will listen to what people have to say, and that like raid stuff is just like you have to be watching what's happening, otherwise it's not even worth putting on. But I'll
yeah.
have like my noise cancelling headphones and my phone in my pocket, and I'll be like doing whatever chores or something, and so I could listen to an ammo tier list. Doesn't
And
really matter what's on
efficient.
the screen.
Yeah, it's very efficient.
Dude, you know me, it's all about efficiency. Like you have to you at some point, like if you're doing as many things as I'm trying to like overlay on top of each other, you got to be doing
Mhm.
like two things at once. Otherwise, it's just not like you're not going to get anything done, or
Yeah.
you're not going to sleep. I already don't sleep, so it's I don't know. It's that shortcut avenue is already already gone. But anyway, you've been playing much Darky this week, or
No,
is
I've
it
been
you've been editing hard?
yeah, I mean, I haven't logged on today to collect my Bitcoin and cycle the crafts, but that's kinda where I'm at right now. I just fell off, and I don't know,
Mm.
I if I get the time, I'll grind to max strength and probably do a video,
Oh
or at
yeah, how
least
far did you get? What strength are you at now?
I think I'm somewhere in the 40s. I don't
Okay, that's
know.
not bad.
Yeah, I mean, I'm close,
Hmm.
so we'll see. We'll see if that comes, but, anyways, after that tangent, how was your week, and what have you been up to?
It's been good. It's been good. I've been super busy as always, and
Mhm,
so what happened last time? Oh yeah, on the in the stream that I did, which went fairly well, I actually started properly transitioning over because I did the low recoil thing. I actually have got like just hundreds of AKs in my my stash, so I
oh,
need to
yeah.
like clear out of some of this stuff. And so I basically like did the suppressors video, so I've just got suppressors everywhere. I didn't want to sell
Mhm.
them because they're expensive, right? And then
Yeah,
I've got like
yeah.
AKs everywhere. So now I've got like 308 muzzle adapters with like every possible suppressor combination
Mhm,
going onto these AKs. And yeah, it's fun. I was actually, it's basically the first time this wipe I properly started using DP. I know it's super good. It's probably the metaest ammo in the game.
mhm.
Um, and yeah, it absolutely slaps. Like there's no doubt about it. It just kills everybody. And I think it's partly a combination of people using class 4, people who are using
Yeah.
class 5 are using the Corundum or the Gazelle, right? And it's like it
Yeah.
just annihilates the lower quality class 5s because by the time the second hit comes, the durability's been destroyed and it just kills
Right.
people. But it's
Was it
not, yeah, it's just like that sweet spot where it's
mhm.
like just into the rounds that do like a lot of damage. Do like six, the fit was it 50 something, 55, 56, 57? I can't remember what
58,
BP
something
does.
something like that,
Yeah,
yeah.
somewhere in that range. So it's like a clear two tap of the thorax, but you can make weapons down to like 44, 50. Like even if you like kind of chill on the parts and you don't go crazy, it's still a 60, and it's at a 600 RPM. So it's like nice and
Yeah.
controllable. AKMs, AKMNs. It's nice. So yeah, I started using those and that's been really good. That's been really, really fun. I think that's the thing about BP too is that you have lots of automatic weapons that cycle nicely. It's like yes, M62 and M80 and M61's great, but the good guns for that, M1A and SR, like the MDR is now really expensive because you can't buy it,
Right.
and the other two are semis, which is fine. That's perfectly okay, but it is nice to have a big old beefy round that punches through people with like a cheap platform and goes on full auto and is like actually kind of controllable, which um yeah, I mean, it's like I played like then a bunch of Factory, just just chilling. I'll probably talk about it a bit later, but basically I crafted, I kind of like switched from one to the other. I crafted a load of PvP, the old set, what was used to be called 7M31. It was the best 9mm ammo you can get that no one's using. I've never seen anybody using it so far this wipe. I've never been shot at with it. I've never been killed with it. And I don't think I looked in all my ammo boxes actually. I don't even have any. I had none. So I couldn't
Mm,
do anything with it. That's why I had to make them because I wanted to do some testing. And I stuck it in the old MP5 SD, which doesn't have very good stats for this wipe. It's got 800 RPM, so even though it's got 32 recoil on the box, it doesn't feel very good. The first couple of rounds jump like crazy, like the M4, which is a bit sad. And I ran around factory and absolutely slayed with it. It was really, really good fun. I don't understand really what happened. I think
mm,
it just feels kind of neat. I don't know. It's maybe it's just because I used that gun so much before. I don't know, and I'm not. Maybe I'm expecting because I used the M4 quite a bit in this wipe even, and with literally everybody go around me just going like, "Why are you using the M4? The M4's terrible. Oh my god, 5.56 is so trash, guys." And so I've gone like one step even lower, right? Even worse ammo,
mhm.
something that's even more sensitive to the recoil change, and I don't know. It's working. It's nice. Seems
Mm,
seems to work for me. It's like killed a bunch of dudes with the SD, which is fun to use again. I mean, it's definitely not meta by any stretch of the imagination, but
yeah.
the gun's super light. Like I've been using like a really light kit, so I've been using like Gazelle armor, um, fate because I've actually finished samples, so I got like
Oh,
some face
did you?
shields, maybe on the LZSH. Yeah, I did it through the. Didn't go to labs once. I did it with the moonshine case and
Okay.
Scavrons. It's literally a combination of those two. And so yeah, it's got like face shield and the gazelle on, and this like SD's like super light. Um, and then maybe one of those what they call like the Tarzan rigs or something. So you're like super light, really maneuverable, like really high movement speed
Mhm,
compared
mhm.
to a lot of other people. And it just feels great. It just kills through class 4, no problem. You can get headshots fairly. Once you've fired the first couple of rounds, you can because the thing is, yeah, the recoil nerfs are bad, right? But the gun does have 32 recoil in the stats. So when you get into the full auto, thresh after you fire like 2 or 3 rounds, that it is pretty laser beam. It doesn't really move once you're into that. So if you have a point blank fight, then
Mhm.
yeah, it's kind of neat. So yeah, I've been like switching around, going that back and forth between BP and PvP. I've actually run out of PvP now. It's gone, so I'm not making any more. I ended up like squeaking the last few bits. I had like 8 PvP at the top with like 12 6.3s underneath and like
Mhm.
10 PSTs at the bottom. I was
Oh
like
my
really trying to
god.
like squeeze out the absolute max that I could out of it, which is quite funny. Um, and I had a really neat fight with a guy on factory where I ran in. His teammate apparently because I spoke to him afterwards on chat, and his teammate got killed by these two hatchlings. I don't know what they had, maybe shotguns. But I ran in, I killed both of them, or the both of the naked guys, and then he was across the it was by sort of the med tent area. So like the open area with med tent, you got those big cylinders, and if you go just past them, if you're going from the new expansion with med tent into the old area, kind of
Okay.
towards Postman Pat, that kind of
Yeah,
direction.
yeah.
There's like I think it's like the back of like a flatbed truck or something without the cargo on it.
Yeah.
There's like a thing in the middle, and we had a fight over that, and he hit me in the face shield, and then I died, and I was like, "Oh man, that sucks." And I went into the post raid screen, and the dude had I can't even remember which ammo it was because it was just something that I never ever used, but it was one of the middle. It was like PP. It was like PPT for like 9x18. I was like,
Yeah.
dude, really? But it was two blunts to the face shield and then lower nape. And I was like,
Oh my
man, like
god.
the one hitbox that you can't defend properly. And then he was level 44 and he messaged me afterwards and was just like, "Hey, you the real GigaBeef?" I was like, "Yeah, yeah, it's me." And he was like, "Dude, how did I kill you?"
Yeah.
And I was like, "Yeah, you hit me in the face twice." Because I was actually like, "Hmm, is that a little sus?" Because literally, I'd like to be fair though, all we could see was each other's heads, so
Yeah.
kind of fine. He wasn't going to hit anywhere else because you couldn't see anywhere else.
Right, right, right.
But I said, "Yeah, you hit me twice in the face shield," and then lower naped me, and he was just like, "Oh man!" But I took like because he said, "Oh, my mate died to the two Timmies," and I heard just death over there, so I came over and just sprayed at you. He was like, "I didn't even know that I killed you." He was like, "I ran off and ran straight into Gilla and died immediately." I was like, "Oh, so it was just a complete mess then." But I like quickly clipped the thing and just like sent it to him. It was just like, "Yeah, here's my perspective if you want to see it." So it was like it was super wholesome, and he was like super nice. So that
That's
was
cool.
that was fun. So yeah, that's kind of been my week. Um, I guess yeah. I mean, the first topic on the general agenda. There hasn't been any news of any kind that I don't think is worth talking about. I mean, what anyone who
I
wants to
mean,
keep up to date with maybe what might be coming is like nice guys videos, but he's like speculating about what might come. What were you gonna say?
the Raider event's over. I mean,
Yeah,
that's and
exactly.
there
So the
was,
radio it's
like
over, everything's back to normal.
yeah, I didn't really watch Nice Guy's video that much, but there was, like, some speculation on
Hmm.
certain things. I didn't really get it, but, yeah, as far as, like, official news or leaks or any of that stuff from BSG, pretty very dry as it is, so
Yeah, exactly. So never fear, the community can deliver when there is not news. So Twitter blew up, and I know not everybody is on Twitter, so it's sometimes good to just revisit.
you're welcome.
Basically,
We are for you.
it seems to me what happened in the first place is people are finishing the content and getting a bit frustrated, and the conversation of inertia kind of people talk about it all the time, but this time it bubbled up into something more fierce, I guess, where it
Mhm,
just kind of went, I don't know, just people were talking about it and it got some people's backs up. And so it ended up in a bit of a situation with lots of people talking about it from different sides about whether it was good for the game, whether it's destroyed the game, whether it still sucks, whether people still want it to be changed or reverted or whatever.
were they
Um,
really talking about that though, or was it
yes, absolutely.
more was it more that they were saying they miss old Tarkov was better? Was that also
Is that not the same thing? Yeah, yes, I agree with you, yes. But, I feel like it's all the same thing, right? It's just like people want it to be well, some people want it to be the way it used to be. Some people say, "I miss the old Tarkov, but
Mhm,
I understand why it has to be this way." But that's I think that's what catalyzed the whole explosion
mhm,
of people talking and whatnot about inertia in particular. I mean, inertia seemed to be the it was the topic that started all of the drama in the first place. Um I mean, this is the thing, right? It's just like people on one side saying the game's gonna continue to go this direction,
mhm,
and other people saying, "Well, you know, we need to give our feedback." I don't know.
mhm.
I think it's a tricky one, right? It's a tricky thing of like people are completely okay to rant on Twitter and stuff, but it's like not gonna it's not gonna change anything unless it comes through the right format. I think this talk of reporter retweet something from Tobias. I think basically like it has, you know, if there's actual critical analyses that people can do on the way that things are and the way that things should be, that's the kind of stuff that gets attention rather than just raising hell on Twitter. I think there was one
Yeah,
particular message series that I read from him talking to somebody else about, well, what exactly do you want changed? And people, I don't know what it's very hard to like if you're not if you're not very precise about what you're actually asking for specifically, then
Mhm.
nothing's ever going to change, right? So you need to be very, very particular. Like if I was giving feedback about Inertia, I can't really be bothered because the system doesn't really it just doesn't bother me that much. Like it's okay, and yeah, it could be tweaked, but I'm happy for them to sort of tweak it as they see fit. But if it was me and I had to write a critique on something, then especially the one part, I wish that the slowdown was faster. I don't mind speeding up being slow. So you're going from stationary to moving. But I do think the slowdown needs to be quicker. And
Mhm.
we've discussed before, if you just let go of the keyboard, it is quicker than
Mhm.
holding one side and holding the other. And those two things need to be brought in line. That would be my personal critique about it. Because I think when you hold down a button and you move,
Mhm.
you feel in control there because you're accelerating your character. When you let go of
Yes.
that button and the character continues to move, that's when it feels bad, I think. But it's very
Yeah.
hard to know without being able to like go through and change it like a couple of times and try out a load of different parameters. It's very difficult to know because the feel of it is very different to some numbers in the spreadsheet or whatever it might be that
Mhm.
actually changes the values on this kind of thing. So I don't know. It's difficult. It's funny because they said that I did. There's one thing though that I do think about, which is BSG say, well, we tested it extensively with people on ETS and that kind of stuff,
Mhm.
and I just wonder how many people actually play ETS. That's just one thing that I wonder, and how much like actual feedback they get from ETS. Like people who are in
S
ETS, because the people who are in ETS tend to be full time content creators and stuff, right? And those people are busy making their content and playing the
Yeah.
live version of Tarkov, not ETS. And so it's it's a bit of a it's a bit of a difficult one. I'm not actually sure about that so much. It does make me wonder about the quality of the feedback necessarily. I don't know. I'm sure
Yeah.
some people are very meticulous, but
As many things are in life, it's a bit of a mixed bag. I've heard from, secret sources, but I'll give you a funny story. So one guy, there was a group of people on the ETS, they were testing. This is all word of mouth rumor, this
mhm.
this is, take it with a grain of salt, but they were trying to meet up in raids and test different things, right? And one guy was saying, "Why are you guys doing this?" Like, or I can't remember exactly details, but he was basically saying, "Bro, I'm just here to get kills and loot and stuff. Like, I don't care about that." And it was just like a major facepalm moment that someone actually was like, "Yeah, I don't know, like, just like, this is just another game for me to play." Like, it's just, like, so weird, So anyways, point being, I laughed earlier because I thought of that story, and it's just like,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm sure it's a mixed bag, and to your point, I think it is a little difficult for content creators to, um, dedicate that time and then not be able to, like, reap anything from it besides, you could argue, like, a long game, like, "Oh, man, this is, like, a dark argument, but, like, oh, here's my feedback because this is good for my content," or whatever. That's, like, a really dark
Mm.
argument, but point being is that I think it's hard for people that do, these types of videos that are very, like, scientific, very analytic, I think of, like, a Veritas science video. I would imagine it'd be kinda, like, yeah, difficult to dedicate the time to do research and then not be able to do anything with it other than just like a, "Here you go, BSG," type of thing. You know what I mean? That makes any sense. But, um, that aside, I completely sidetracked myself and you probably, so.
Yeah, so
Oh,
yeah, I mean, it's like I guess it was mainly the inertia thing, but then there was like a whole other set of stuff that kind of came out in the community with people talking about the game and like there was the whole strange side tangent of drama that came up around like people who play the game full time, they only play Tarkov, but people who don't like playing the game anymore because the way it's gone, but they rely on it for their income. And that's like it's much more tricky there. It's like if you're just playing the game and you don't like the game anymore, then you can just go. But if you have been playing the game for like 3 years or something in its existing form, and then the game changes, then it's a difficult decision for these people, right? Because they've built up their whole audience around one game, and
Yeah.
especially I think it's especially for people who are known for being super good as well, because then
Mhm.
it's a very specific Tarkov thing. And if you switch to another game, like there's a learning curve there. Like they're probably going to be cracked at something else, but it still takes time.
Mhm.
And people are known for being really really good at that one individual thing. So it's that tricky one of if people aren't enjoying the game now, people are like, well, you just go and play something else, and it's like, well, it's not necessarily that straightforward. And while I do feel for those guys, like the game doesn't like owe them anything, in my opinion. Do you know what I mean? Like it's tricky. Like the situation for them, it's
Right.
that definitely sucks. Like don't get me wrong, it definitely sucks. Like I'm not like unsympathetic, but it's always possible that the game changes or something happens or whatever, and it's a bit like any enterprise where you're like super reliant on like one individual thing. Like there's risk involved in that, and that's true for any business, right? It's not just streaming Tarkov, that's anything. If you and I don't know, have run a cake shop, but you have like there's only one place that farms, the raw material that you need nearby, and they have a huge fire and it shuts down. Well, your business is like that's it. So it's like there's no. I just don't feel like it's any different, and it sucks for these people, but they should, at least if they're like not enjoying it now, and it's still running now, and it's still working, they're just not enjoying it that much, right? I think the onus is really on them to try and fix that themselves. So like it's a decision they have to make about how to transition, right? It's like it's for them to decide on how to do that and what they want to do. I think not really on the game. The game is completely separate from that. It's kind of their choices that have kind of led them to this place in the first place, and only they can really fix it and get themselves out of it. Is in my opinion.
So what you're saying is that they built up a business, and that business is around, them doing a particular set of actions, right?
Mhm,
And people go to them for that. Like, let's take Landmark for as an example. Um, I think Landmark got started from I don't want to say got started, but I think a big spike in Landmark's popularity was from Pestilli rating him. I think Pestilli's told the story before. Um, but he was really good at the game, and I think that people would go to him, or yeah, we'll stick with Landmark. We'll go to him to see he's good at the game. But I think, I at least this is my opinion. I find now that Landmark has really evolved a lot, and that he's much it's less about going to watch Landmark play Tarkov, it's more about going to watch Landmark. You know what I mean? Like, there's a difference there. And he's like, I personally find him very entertaining. I don't really watch a lot of Twitch. I'm more of a YouTube guy, but nonetheless, I think that that's sort of the shift, because I find when Landmarks, occasionally I'll look on Twitch and I'll see like who's doing what and whatnot. And I'll see Landmarks like playing Call of Duty, and he still has really healthy numbers. Like, maybe sure, I mean, it's not exactly fair because we're talking 50% maybe, of what he normally has. Um, and because he has such a larger number of viewers, I mean, that's a lot more. Yeah, it's like, yeah, it's percentages, but when you talk about the actual difference, it's pretty significant. If you compare it to like 200 viewers to like, half of that is 100, or even like 30%, like, 50 or something. And
yeah.
it's whereas like Landmark, half of that is like 15,000 viewers. That's a lot more. So, anyways, it's a little bit different. But the point being is that what I'm trying to say to you is that what you're saying essentially is that, if you there's like two things going on. One, there's that first thing where like you have your business and that's your strategy, right? And if something in the affects that business, then your strategy kind of gets thwarted. The other part is sort of the balance between your mental sanity, I guess, and running your business.
Mhm.
It's like kind of like the guy going, stuck in like a shitty job or whatever, but it's like, either I don't eat or I, keep
Yeah,
so I kind of, that's like the sympathetic side and I can see that, but I think that what you're saying essentially is that it's not on the game. It's almost as if they are asking that someone change their business strategy for them and in some roundabout way.
kind of. Yeah, it's like
Because like if you had the glory days, um, you're the economy. Okay, I'll stop using metaphors. The game is like one to one to what you want it to be, and like you're enjoying yourself, and like you're getting a lot of viewers and things like this. It's like it's really good. It's like you're reaping a lot. But when that changes, I don't know. Like I would love to see the analytics on this stuff because like would they lose viewers? You know, if because the game changed, all of a sudden it's like, well, I only came here to watch you play, be good at this version of the game. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
it does, yeah. I think, like, to that particular point,
Hmm.
and I mean, maybe, yeah, don't wanna labour the point for too long on this stuff, but I
Okay.
think to, like, that particular point, I think I do appreciate from some of the top guys, and I put a tweet out about this, right, which is the way that I feel about the situation, which is that I do, and actually, I think you maybe posted the opposite, so I'm interested to see what you think about this, because I
Yeah.
I put out a tweet that said, I think that the skill cap of the game at the top end has been lowered, but it was also necessary. And for me, it's a little bit
Hmm.
like the flea market, right? Like, I, for one, really enjoyed the flea market the way that it was. I really enjoyed it. It actually plays into my style of the get of like, it's not like in the game stuff, right? But it's like economic stuff, like spotting opportunities, that kind of thing. Like, that's stuff that I'm quite good at. And when that was removed, the part of the game that I enjoyed was removed. Is the game better off for that? Yes, it is, but I still enjoyed it.
Hmm.
It's like I agree with the removing that section, but it was something that I liked. And so that's kind of like, it's kind of the same thing in some ways. It's like, you know, the game, if you're thinking about it as a competitive shooter and pitching your skills against other top players, pre-inertia Tarkov, I think, had a higher skill ceiling. So the differentiating factor between two players of similar but not equal skill, I think previously it was higher and more differentiating, and now it is less differentiating. I think there are now less options for players in fights because there are less places to go. There is less opportunities and avenues for movement. There's, but that comes part and parcel with the way that the game is going, which is that it's supposed to be more tactical, slower paced, right? It's not supposed to be about who can get the 15-degree quick lean, like snap headshot around the corners, right? Glorious dude's like an absolute monster at that. But
Hmm.
and I actually really enjoyed watching him take those shots and just be good at that stuff. But it shouldn't really be in the game, right? It's not the way the game's supposed to play out. And so they took away that kind of thing. And that's just the way that I see it, right? And that's why my tweet was just like, these two things can be both true at the same time. That
Yeah.
it's actually bad for competitive play in general, but the game's not a competitive game, so whatever. And it's also necessary, right? These two things can both be true at the same time. Like, both of you guys are right. There's people arguing about, oh, the game's less competitive, da da da, and other people being like, yeah, but the game's always going this way, it needs inertia, da da da. And like, they're both kind of right, but it just depends on what your perspective on the game. So some of the top guys who, and it generally tends, I mean, I know it's almost a meme at this point, but the guys who play labs only because they tend to be the people who are the best at the game, right? Mechanically speaking, are the people that don't like this stuff as much because it made that specific subset of the game less satisfying for them. That, if you're really
Yeah.
super cracked, you probably die more than you did before. Does that have an impact on viewership if we're talking strictly Twitch as a business? Maybe, if you're not clearly as good as you were previously, because now fights that used to be 70-30 are now 55-45. I don't know. Like, I'm not good enough mechanically to tell you that that's the case. I don't know. But you can just see from the way that people are talking about it that that's at least how people feel. and that it promotes types of gameplay that they don't like playing, that are unfun for their viewers
I
to
think
watch, like
that's
people holding angles and dying, right? That's that kind of thing, which is
yeah.
where they're coming from. But to my original point, I mean, the game is not there to justify your streaming. The game is there on
Mhm.
its own, right?
Right.
And the you then take the opportunities that you can from a business side from what exists, and you need to have. I mean, it's not like Tarkov made it a secret what they're wanting in the future.
Mhm.
So it's also a little bit less like the random barn fire destroys all the crops because this path is going to continue. Nikita said it's going to continue this way. So I think people just have to get used to it, unfortunately.
Yeah. I mean, I do kind of feel on the point of that the old, patches were more fun for, my playstyle or whatever. Like I do kind of like
Mm,
feel that because I personally really like going fast. I don't know, it's just this weird like even
gotta
in
go
Rocket
fast.
even in Rocket League, dude, I just like sometimes I'll just like go for like the most difficult impossible shot, like full momentum, don't stop, and I'll
Mhm,
like completely whiff every time, but it's still just like something about just like, yeah. So like, and I remember watching a Bake Easy highlight video, and dude, the guy was just like, like the literal essence of cracked. Like he was like he was running from one direction, free looking, and then the next frame was like he would did a complete 180 and was running and looking at the opposite direction. Like, and it was just like boom, 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 and it's
mhm,
just like whoa, you know what I mean? Now, I personally think that there's like a weird curve, and I don't know how to explain it well, but for me at least, how I see it is talked about this before, so I'll try to be brief. Is I felt as if the default play at some point was to just constantly be moving, right?
mm,
And there really wasn't any penalties. Like, I just felt like I could just sprint anywhere, and if I get shot at, no problem. Just lock on target, AD, AD, he can't hit me, essentially. Like, it's kinda crazy how it used to be, because your movement was just your changing direction was just there was no inertia, it was instant. And I always felt like if you took 2 players of, like, equal skill level, right? And you put them in a scenario where they're in a hallway, they're both, like, exposed, they're both aiming at each other, and you hit go, and they both shoot each other. They're both gonna do the same movement, which is just spamming AD, AD, right? And I always felt that that was, like, a bit of a crutch because there was a certain like, threshold, like, once you reach this certain skill level, if you will, um, you obtain the knowledge and power of spamming AD, AD, and it just sort of, like, boosted you to the next like, you just skipped a bunch of tiers. You know what I mean?
mm.
Like, your power
Yeah.
level just increased a lot. At least this is how I felt, right? Whereas now, I don't really have that crutch, so I have to, like, be very mindful of my positioning, and I find there's a big emphasis on right side peeking, which I think there was previously, but especially now, because you don't have that other crutch or tool set, um, I just find right holding right angles and right side peeking is just, like, super strong, like,
Mhm,
you can still be aggressive, um, but you just have to, like, play around the fact that you can't instantly change your direction and make it harder to hit. And then the other part that I think that sort of, like, muddied the skill level a bit was when in the past, as I said, with AD strafing, it made tracking really difficult because you're not able you basically have to guess if they're gonna continue strafing or when they're gonna change their direction, and you can't actually, like, react fast enough because there is no smooth movement, it's just instant. So you add that on or you take that and you add on top of aim punch, where their character model is moving up, your camera is moving up, your vision gets blurred, right? So it just becomes like this really messy firefight. Like I've had some firefights where it's just like, man, I probably shouldn't have won that, but it just so happens I won that. So I felt like the older what I'm trying to say is I think that the older Tarkov and the 80 no inertia, there was this weird point once you like get comfortable with the game and then you learn the 80 spamming, your power level just goes way up. Whereas now I think that it's a lot more linear or smoother, I guess, and that um it's like actually punishing. Like you if you run, I can't just hold shift and then instantly default to 80 AD. You know what I mean? I have to actually be mindful of the system, and I like that because I think it adds more depth. And yeah,
I
that's
think I know what you mean. I think I know what you mean. It's
it's a
like,
hard thing to explain, but
yeah, like even if it's almost like a step change thing. It's like, oh, you suddenly unlocked, the advanced tube or whatever. So now your guns can just all have like much lower recoil. But it's like, oh, you understood the 80-80 situation. So now you're on par with all the other people who are 80-80ing, and now we reset everybody because everyone's now at the same level who is doing that. You stomp on everyone who's not doing it. Anyone who is doing it, now you're playing again within your skill brackets. And someone
Mhm.
who's better will probably still win because they'll pre-fire you better, or they'll predict you better, or nade you
Sure.
better, or flush you out better, whatever. Whereas before it was like, yeah, it was like that step change. Whereas now, as you say, it's everyone's sort of back onto a more even footing. And I think that's why, like, I was very precise with the way I tried to describe it and saying that it's about like mechanically the skill cap was higher before, because now I actually agree with you that, like, tactically speaking, there's more to think about, right? Because now cover's more important.
I see
Now
what you're saying.
there's various elements that have now been boosted in terms of importance, and what has been pull back again a little bit is like specifically movement and yeah, just as you said about Make Easy, right? Like swinging around, changing direction, all of that stuff has been pulled back, and so
Yeah.
there's emphasis now on different things, and it's more punishing in some ways. Dude, I had like you just reminded me. I had one fight with a guy. Like, oh my god, it was in forklift, right? And I was reviewing the clip, and he just was like in the back room, and I thought somebody else outside, and I knew he was in there because I heard him like reload his magazine or something. And I had my MP5 SD with PvP ammo in it, and I was like, right, we're just gonna have to look. I looked around and I was like, oh, this dude's like behind the box for sure, like 100% behind the box. So I'm just gonna have to come out just pre-firing. And I like step around the corner, and as soon as I come through the door, I get shot basically in the arm.
Oh.
And the guy's got a flashlight. I can see he's got a flashlight. I'm just like,
Mm.
this is going to be a rough fight. So I get shot in
Yeah.
the arm, and he's got flashlight on as I step around the corner. I think I must have fired the whole mag. I think I killed him after like 20 shots or something, 22 shots, and then finished the rest of them off into the wall behind him. And I went back to review the clip just to, because I was actually looking at the armor, because I had a Gazelle on, and it wasn't a full one, but it was like fifth. I think I'd repaired it once, so it was not 65 max. It was down at 57 or something, because I'd repaired it one time after it getting zeroed, and it was at 57. And I got the guy had a like near stock M4
Uh-huh.
with 855 in it.
Mm.
I'm not actually. It's very difficult to tell, even if you look frame by frame at your model. It's very hard to tell these days what hit the armor and what didn't hit the armor. But anyway, I got completely shredded by this guy. He blacked out both of my arms first. And then there's like, it's either like random blunt damage happening, or I can see the armor gets hit at least twice. And the Gazelle has like 5 out of 56 against like 855,
Yeah.
right? And I was like, how does that even happen for one? Like I was nearly dead because I got shot in the blacked out arm like once or twice, and I'd like splash damage across everywhere or whatever. But as I was going through the fight, literally, like the moment I stepped through the door, I couldn't really see him anyway because of the flashlight. As soon as he hits my arm, from that moment to the end of the fight, my screen is either blurred, like flash lit only plus blur, his muzzle flash, like my character's pain thing.
Mhm.
There is not a single frame between the moment in which I stepped into the room and his death where I can actually see on the screen.
Yeah.
And when you play it in normal speed, just because of like the way our brains work, right? And just like our heuristics about how we understand, because you can see, as anyone who's like an experienced player, you can see the movement of his character through all of the crap on screen, right? You can
Right.
work it out because you can just see like shadows of like legs and arms strafing and muzzle flash going off. Um, Someone said in chat actually he could have top loaded another ammo. That is totally possible. He was level 16, so I'm not sure. He could have. He could have though. He could have. That's fair. That is fair.
Fragmentation was the other thing I
Yeah.
was gonna say.
Or yeah, exactly. Or fragmentation. I feel like one of them might have hit the arm and then hit the armor afterwards or something as well. I don't know. It was yeah, it was a bit of a mess. But anyway, you can kind of see what's going on at full speed actually better than any of the individual static screenshots, weirdly, because of the way that your brain interprets the movement of the other player. But after looking at it, I was like, man, that is absolutely wild. Like it's so hard to see, even in full, even in like full normal speed. Trying to watch it back, I was just like, I can't see anything. Like the dude's just like a huge white blur in the middle that gets whiter as his gun fires, and is like all blurred out because I've got two black arms at this point and like the pain situation going on. And it was just me holding down mouse one and like until the guy's dead. Which was pretty nuts. It was pretty nuts. So yeah, I don't know, the whole, it's less about aim punch for me, and it's about that like overall blurring, because I've seen like sometimes when you only notice it when you go back through and like edit clips in like minute detail, and I've seen that before where you get hit a couple of times and the screen goes from like blurry
Yeah,
into normal. I've seen
yeah.
that like multiple times, but this one was like no respite, just the whole
Mhm.
thing blurred until the man fell on the floor. And I was like, okay, well, maybe that's a bit much. I mean, he did. To be fair, he did actually shoot me a lot. He hit me a lot. So he was probably quite angry about that. But I don't know. It is what it is. But yeah, no, I'm not sure exactly where I was going with that. But just you reminded me because of that insane scenario, and I almost didn't kill him with a much better kit, even though I shot him a bunch of times as well. Just simply because you just can't see. You just can't see,
Yeah.
especially if the guy's got a flashlight. Like it's wicked bright.
Yeah, I mean, after having this conversation, I'm starting to think that this is intentional from BSG Design in that, they like, when we just talk about things that, like, inertia, aim punch, the blur, the pain, all the visual stuff, the flashlights, the weapon jams, like, all these things kind of, like, dilute the mechanical aspects in a way, and they
Yeah,
sort of make it more of a even playing ground in a sense. Um, I don't know, that's interesting. Like, you know, for me, the blurry aim punch isn't really my favorite thing in the world. I would, I think most games have some type of aim punch, but I would much prefer not to have a blurry vision effect. But it does add that sort of very strategical element where, that if I shoot this guy, he's gonna lose stamina, he's gonna be aim punched, he's gonna get blurry vision if I hit, because I think if it hits the armor, you don't get the blurry vision. I don't know. Anyways, fun
I
fact,
actually am not sure.
but back on topic. So yeah, I think that now I understand your point better, and I agree that the mechanicalness of the movement has decreased a bit. In some weird ways, it's changed because of the bug you can do of like letting go of your keyboard and pressing the opposite direction. But anyways, I digress. I see your point now is that yeah, there is a lot less things you could do because the movement was so freeing. You could do some really crazy stuff. Um, and that was like a very high, I think your average gamer wouldn't necessarily be able to do
Yeah.
what Big Keezy could do. You know what I mean? I think that's a kind of a higher mechanical skill gap thing. And I also think that you sort of enlightened what I was saying is that it's made it more strategic now. So it's like you've changed the bars a bit. So that's interesting. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I think like for me, it's probably even changed the way that I play, after going through my rut like a month ago or something and coming out the other side, reborn the Phoenix as a new Tarkov player. But it's kind of just like revisiting old principles and things that work, and the way that
Mm.
kind of like the way that is it's almost I've almost gone back to like the way that I used to play Tarkov before it was good. You know what I mean? Like I used to play really strategic tactical Tarkov before that was the play. And
Oh
so I've just
yeah.
basically I've gone back to that, And that now works really well because it's just like, oh, if you have like a 1v1 with a guy, you're both spraying at each other and you can't see anything. It's very hard to, just rush into people because holding angles is a bit stronger now. And the peeker's advantage is not gone, but it's lessened because it's harder to turn around that corner and right side peeking is so much harder, whatever. And I get way more kills just being super strategic and killing people when they don't even see
Mhm.
me. That's the best way because if you're not getting shot at, you're not getting aim punched. If you're not getting shot at, then you're not getting the blurry vision. If you're not getting shot at, then you can just put pressure on people and tap them out. It's funny. I had an interesting one on interchange because I think I had to do some. I think I just had to extract. I think I had daily. I can't remember exactly what it was. I think it was just one of those. And oh no, it wasn't that. It was I finally pursued down the skier quest line past chumming. That was it. Because you have to do 5 kills on interchange and you have to do them at
Mhm.
night. I don't like night raids. I also don't like interchange. And so the combination of the 2 means I get there every wipe and just go, and I do every other possible quest, and then eventually I'm just like, "Man, I probably should get back and do this one." And the thing is, the way I ease into it is I normally go like, "Hi, is now the time? No, is now the time? No, is not." And I go, "Ah, yes," because it's 10 p.m. till 10 a.m. that you can do those kills, right? And
Mhm.
so usually the way I ease into it is I do a couple of raids at like 7, 8 a.m. when it's light, it's daytime.
Mhm.
But it still counts for the first bit anyway. I mean, so long if you get in at 7, then it's pretty much the whole raid. But if you're getting in at 9, you only have the first 15 minutes. You basically have to rush spawns and then leave otherwise. So I had a couple of those games where I did actually manage to go in and get some kills in the day, in the
Mhm.
morning, the early morning, which is fine. And I had 4 out of 5. And I finished some other stuff that I had to do on stream, and I was like, "Guys, should we just do this one? Should we just do this?" We were like toying backwards and forth about, I'm just gonna stay outside. I'm not going into the mall. Like, there's no chance. Am I even gonna wear NVGs? Is it worth it outside? I don't know. And some people are like, it depends on the weather, and I'm just like, oh, but I can't trust the weather on the thing. And we had like, this whole conversation about like whether I'm gonna go in or not, and it was like midnight in change. I was like, so I ended up going in without NVGs. It was actually fairly clear, and I could see just fine, actually. It was okay. It wasn't a problem. And just, like, taking it, tactical, nice and slow, whatever, through the scav camp area, that general bit on the road where there's all the
Yeah.
tents and stuff, like, the place people usually go for scavs outside, and see some dudes there, and they were just, like heard them anyway, like, they've run past and just, like, sneak up in the bush, track them. One guy's coming across, BP straight through the head. With like throw 2 grenades, run around to the outside, come in from the complete other side. So like exactly where the guy's not expecting me to come in from. Come through. I'm just like, really cautious. Just like I know that there's other guy there. Like there's no way I killed him with that grenade. Maybe I did, but I'm just not going to even consider that possibility. Sneak around, being like super super careful, and then finally like spot somebody walking up and just BP through his head as well. I was like, I thought it was a scav. Turned out it was the second guy from the duo. I killed both those guys and finished chumming, and I was like, that's like textbook Tarkov though to me. I've just been doing like tons of like huge wide flanks. Like as soon as I kill somebody, or like you fire a couple of shots, like and people say like reposition, dude. Like I come in from literally like, and I know this has almost become a joke with like Airing and me, because every time he's in my chat, he's just like Giga's like off on one like insane. I'll be like halfway around the map. I'm like, yeah, I started over at gas station, and I'm now at I'm down at like are you a roadblock or something? I'm like on a
Mhm.
different map entirely with the length of this
The l
flank, and sometimes they end up flanking into other groups and things. Like
Yeah, the
it's actually
longest,
crazy.
yeah,
The
and
longest flanks ever, yeah.
yeah.
But that's like quite because before I was basically between the scav camp and the mall, and then
Mhm.
I came in and they were running towards railway, and I basically came in. I like just hard sprinted and then came in from the railway end. So I was like, if the guy's trying to exfil still, like he's going to run into me, but he's going to run into me the way that he doesn't think I am. So but that's like that stuff has been working really, really, really well, like super well. Like it's honestly the best I've been playing in ages in terms of getting kills and that kind of stuff. But I think that all of this stuff that has come through has helped, right? It's like this is the way the game is is played now. And it's so risky to be in 1v1 situations trying to out aim somebody, especially if you're an average aimer. Like if you're cracked, then like fine. Maybe you can get away with it some more, but you're still probably occasionally going to get caught out, and now it's harder to recover because you can't get back into cover as much anymore. And all the blurriness and stuff. Like it just makes it hard to figure out where people are shooting you from. It's just tricky. It's not easy.
Mhm.
So yeah, I don't know. Like I think it's done what they wanted it to do, and hopefully people are playing the game the way that they want people to be playing. But for me, it seems to be working.
Yeah, I think it's also in line with their whatever their target audience is. I don't know what that is exactly, but, um, when I first started playing Tarkov, you trying to learn the game, there's a lot to learn, whatever, but I consider myself a very comfortable FPS player. But, of course, the intensity of Tarkov, the nerves get to you and things like this. I just found that I was dying a lot, and I didn't really understand how to play this game because there's all these mechanics. There's a slow lean, there's the regular lean. You can adjust your height position. You can prone, you can crouch, you can change your walking speed. You can sprint, you can power slide. You can overhead blind fire. You can do all these things, right? And eventually, and I'm really glad that I played Factory because eventually it just became, oh, this isn't a tactical shooter necessarily. This is just like kinda arcadey in a way,
Mm.
it was like that sort of, like, breaking point from when was first playing the game and whatever patch that was, once I sort of grasped that, like, "Oh, I can sort of play this like a more traditional FPS, and it works really well." Um, so I think that Inertia is going to sort of be more in line with how they see the game and how they want, or more so the target audience. It's not going to be this weird disillusion thing where it's just like, why is this arcadey, player first person shooter play style like more effective than this more tactical thing that you sold the game on me. Blah. The other thing I was going to say, and we'll get back to the drama because I know you guys are dying. You guys are dying to get to Twitter drama. So here's what bugs me about Inertia is that I got my controller here, okay, and as you know, the trigger buttons are analog. So if you
Mm.
squeeze slowly, if you're playing like a racing game, you will slowly accelerate the gas, and if you squeeze it all the way down, then it's like full throttle. Whereas a keyboard, it's not analog. It's I don't know what it is. It's fucking button you
Digital.
press. Yeah. So you push it, and no matter how soft or hard you push it, it's always going to be at 100%, right? So it really makes racing games very difficult because A, you can't control your acceleration. B, you can't control how much steering you do. Like they have some accessibility options, which you can like take a slider and say how aggressive you want the steering
Mm.
to be. But it's usually just a game of like tapping A and D to try to like go in a straight line or try to like slightly turn. It's actually funny, but nonetheless, how does this relate to Tarkov? Well, I find with how other developers have sort of like overcome this with in terms of like inertia movement is that since you can't control how fast you want to accelerate, they'll have like a walking speed, right? And you can sort of like some games will have a very simple thing. You can like press one button and now you're walking. And when you release it, now you're moving normally, right? Um, as far as inertia goes, how Tarkov has done it, and the reason why I think it feels bad is because when you're moving in a direction, you're accelerating and you let go, you sort of like are still moving, right? And
Hmm.
we'll put the inertia hack, if you will, whatever you want to call it, in a bucket outside of this. But if you try to press in the opposite direction, nothing happens. It's like it still plays that movement, right? As you're moving forward.
Yeah.
And how other games overcome this is they sort of like merge the two. So if you're moving in one direction, you can also move in another direction, but the two forces will cancel each other out over time, right? So they sort of like play the same animation. And I think that for me, like it's just I remember day one of the wipe, dude, playing Scav on Lighthouse. I literally felt like I was drunk. Like I could not walk in a straight line because my character was like sliding with the movement. So I was like trying to like move through doorways inside a house. And I'm not exaggerating, GigaBeef. I mean, I probably am a little bit, but I could not walk in a straight line and get to like inside the room and loot the duffel bag. It was that crazy. And that's probably just partly because, instantly change in
Mhm.
environment and whatnot. But the point being, I think for me, inertia would feel a lot more in place and make a lot more sense because, like I said, we don't have that analog controller. So when I'm sprinting overweight, in real life, and I want to slow down, I'm putting some force to slow down. You know what I mean? It's not like I'm
Mm.
just like, I'm gonna keep running. Whoa, I'm falling forward. I'm gonna just let gravity do its thing, and I'll slowly come to a stop. It's you actually put some force backwards. And I think giving that to the player where like they can actually interact with the game in a sense
Mhm.
to do that, I think that would make it feel a lot better. And the values could be whatever, whatever they see fit. But I think just having that in there would just make it feel so much better.
So that would be when people let go, you'd have to actually press, let's say you're running forwards, you'd have to actually press backwards to try and slow yourself down, or would it just be like letting go of the keyboard completely would automatically happen?
So as it stands currently, when you let go of the keyboard completely, it automatically happens, right? Whereas
Eventually, yeah.
you could have a mix of both. So in other words, in real life, I could just let go, metaphorically speaking, of the key
Mm.
and just keep running until I fall to a stop. Or I could apply some force of my legs and slow myself down. So you could have both. You could have as the system currently stands, or you could
Yeah.
also have where you could apply some type of negative force to that direction.
I wonder how that would feel. That'd be that's really all that matters with this stuff, isn't it? It's just like how would that actually feel to play? Like,
Mhm.
would it feel weird to be moving left and then you press right to like move right quicker as opposed to coming to a stop left, or like forwards and then you're trying to press backwards to change direct or to stop faster? I don't know how that would feel mechanically with your hand, which is
Mhm.
something that's important for the game, but not important for
Yeah.
realism, which is kind of a funny thing actually. But that's important as to how it ends up feeling. So
Well,
I don't know.
see,
It's an interesting idea.
I would argue it is important for realism because that's kind of my argument is that in real life, I don't just stop running. I apply some negative force to me, and I'm saying the game doesn't allow me to act that out. It
Oh, I
just
see.
automatically does that for me, which is the part of inertia that I'm most critical about that I don't like because
Mhm.
it's like I have no it's like the PMC auto recoil control thing, it's like I don't really have any control. It's the game's doing it for me. Like it's a weird
And doing
part.
it for me in one specific way that doesn't allow me to
Right.
tailor it to the situation I'm in. That's what you're saying, right? So
Yes.
yeah, I get what you're saying there. You're saying, okay, fine, we've got a keyboard. Analogy is the wrong word, but a keyboard analogy of you walking forwards and either coming to a gentle stop or trying to dramatically change your speed, which you would be able to do in IRL, but not if not with the existing system. Yeah, no, that's interesting. Interesting. I don't know. Yeah, it would depend on how it felt. I think to the
Yeah.
player.
That's
Um,
yep, for sure.
I do just think it's unfortunate that we don't get to test some of these things. That there aren't more test beds for this stuff where you could change values and that kind of thing. And I know that they don't really want to do it that way. It's not really the way the
Mhm.
EFT's been done, but I wish there was more support for this kind of thing.
Yeah.
Even
It'd
if
be
it
nice.
was doesn't need to be part of the official game, but to allow people to do some stuff if they're super interested, right? To have like some ways of having a controlled test environment. That means you need to be logged into your account and connected or whatever. You're never going to go online necessarily and play against others. I mean, yeah, honestly, a more extensive offline mode would be really, really handy. And I know they said they're going to bring in a multiplayer offline mode, but to be able to actually do that, one, to be able to trust the results of the offline mode because it's the making sure it's actually the same build as the real game because it isn't always. This is why if you try to submit anything to the wiki from offline mode, they won't accept it because offline mode isn't always the same build as the actual live server game version, which is interesting. Um, and yeah, and to allow it to be multiplayer because then people would be able to do the various things that people like Veritas do, the stuff that I test, it would make it so much easier to figure out what was going on. Because at the moment, you have to do all kinds of dark arcane magic to test some of this stuff, or go into raid with like live real like people. The fact that people still have to go into live real raids with real gear out of their actual stash to go and
Mhm.
test like values for
Yeah.
ammo and stuff in like a live raid where people are killing them is just weird. I just don't think it's like
Yeah.
what's the point of that? I don't
That's
really get it.
where it complicates things. It's like, is it a beta? Is it a live service game? I mean, I've played in some betas in the past, and I mean, things were different back then. I mean, you could have your
Mm,
own private servers, so it's like, yeah, things are different in the modern gaming age, but
yeah,
it's it is what it is.
exactly. And that's the thing. You could argue that BSG are they're testing the community as much as they're testing the game. It's like how much does the community find out and work out from our stuff? If we make changes, how quickly does the community find out? Like, what is
Yeah.
their feedback based on the things we check? We know the actual answer. What does the community come to as a
Mhm.
conclusion? If you wanted to make that argument, I'm not sure if that's entirely valid, but you could make that argument. Um, anyway, anyway. Any more on inertia? Any more on this topic? I'm probably
I don't think so, man.
got everything I'm going to say about it.
I mean, the only thing I'll say is I do think that, you sort of started this conversation with the joking phrase of how, like, around 3 months, this type of stuff comes up, and it
Yeah,
really does come up, and it's not necessarily inertia. It's just more so the I don't know what it is, and I think it's oversimplification of the answer is that there's not enough content in Tarkov, and people are just whining to whining or venting to vent, and I get that, and yeah, I mean, it is what it is, but, I don't know,
yeah,
man. I don't know. We'll see what the next in 6 months from now, we'll see what the next hot topic is and hot takes are coming out, so
exactly. It's going to be how busted the lighthouse trader guards
yeah.
are, and why they may as well not have put him in the game because it's impossible to get to him.
Dude, I miss the old patch, dude. Those were the glorious days. This newest patch, it's awful. Yeah, funny stuff. Okay, so, what else you got for me, Giga? I know you had some other topics.
Yeah, I wanted to chat quickly. I mean, it's not a massive topic. It depends on what we want to talk about with it. But I wanted to mention the kind of connecting maps open world
Oh,
video
yeah,
thing that I
yeah.
did because that was kind of fun and like a little bit different. And our man Jesse Kazam talked about it on his stream, which I was like super happy about. He basically like played it on stream while he was like between raids with Seedable, which was super cool, and sent like a load. I didn't know, like he didn't say anything. I didn't know except a couple of people wrote comments being like, Jesse told me to come here. So I went back and like had a look and see what he said, and you know, super appreciate the support from Jesse. It's like super cool.
Yeah.
It's just really nice when stuff like that happens, right? Like I put a tweet out being like, did actually made my day, and it actually did. Like it's just super nice. Um, but yeah, it was good. Like he said, it got him hyped about Tarkov. There's like a bunch of people who also came in commenting, being like, either because I knew that this would be the case. Like a load of people being like, I've played these maps like tons of times. I've never noticed this and that and the other. Like it's something that always kind of broadly interested me. So I've kind of been like picking them up and storing them in the back of my head for
Mhm.
ages. I've had this video on my list of things to make probably for a year. I would say like it's one of the topics I've had forever,
Wow.
and there never seemed like enough info, or it wasn't the right time, or whatever, right? But because they added a load of stuff recently, they added the lighthouse bridge, which is like super iconic, and the fact that you can like
Yeah.
reserve and shoreline and lighthouse, like you can see bits of all of them from all the other maps. And then from there, it's like from reserve now you can see like the customs like Telco's tower over by dorms, and you can see the train crash thing. Like it's just like how it's all coming together is super cool. And you can see streets over the top of it if you've got your draw distance on high enough. Sometimes you can just see it through your scope. If you've got your draw distance on a normal level, like I do,
Mhm.
I actually had to go back and re-record a load of it because I had my draw distance on what I usually do, which I think is it's either like 1/500 or 2K. I can't remember. But I noticed at one point I looked over and I was like, oh no, there's streets in the scope. Whoops. So I had to go back and put it on like 3,500 so I could see it natively without ADSing
Yeah.
through one of the four times is, which is quite funny. But yeah, just so many people were like so happy about it learning these connections for the first time because it's one of those things where it's like for me it feels like I don't know, it's something from that I haven't felt in a long time, which I feel like it used to happen in I'm trying to think of a good example. I didn't really think about this beforehand, but it's just come to me now. But it's something where you go through and you play something a million times, and then there's like some crazy link or something that it's like an Easter egg almost. It's in the background where you never noticed, and somebody
Yeah.
tells you, and you're like, "Oh, dude, that's so cool." It always gives you that kind of like tingly feeling where you're like, "Oh man, it's like kind of creepy." There's like all these connections. It's like if you, I know it's like almost like not like a conspiracy theory. That's kind of the wrong way to put it, but do you know what I mean? It's just like you suddenly see all these like hidden connections, like that GIF with the dude with the pins, and you're like, and it's like it's all coming together. Like it's that feeling. I don't know. It's it feels like that for me. So yeah, there's a lot of people who were really hyped about it. There was a ton of people actually as well who just said, "This is, I don't think this is ever coming," which I thought was valid. I think they're wrong, but it's fair enough. If you don't think it's coming, then okay. I think personally, I
Well,
think
don't
it's
think what's
coming
coming.
connected maps at all. They don't think the maps are ever going to
Oh,
connect.
okay. Yeah, I
And I'm
don't
like,
know, dude.
I think it's going to in one. I don't
That's
think it'll
the
be open world because people were talking about open world in the
yeah, I
comments
don't
on it, and
know.
I'm like, I didn't call it open. That's why I called it like connecting maps because
Mhm.
that's like more generic, right? I don't think it's going to be open world. I think that's the wrong way to talk about it. I think the maps are going to be connected, and exfils are going to link one map to another. I don't
Yeah, I
think that
think
because some people would like, oh, I'm gonna have to buy a RTX 4 million in order to run this if they're running. And I'm like, dude, they're not gonna load all the maps at once. Like, what are
yeah.
you on?
I
What do you
mean
think they're gonna do? Like, that's nuts.
I mean, it's yeah, they could, but they would have to I think the proper term is coal or no, include a lot of stuff, which wouldn't be ideal because like if you were to like just think how Lighthouse performs. Now imagine having everything rendered on surrounding that. Like it wouldn't run, so you would have to like pass a certain distance, not call anything, but then that wouldn't be great because say you're on Reserve Dome and you want to turn around sniping the resort, well, like how far away? Like, yeah, there would be some it would be a technical challenge, and Tarkov already has its technical challenges. So
Yeah.
I don't see that's the thing that's like most exciting for me is like thinking about the possibility of open world. Um as far as like connecting maps is like it's kind of cool because you get to see the world building aspect like oh there's interchange, but then it's like a I don't know, it doesn't seem the effect when I go back to the menu and I click interchange and then I would go to enter. Like maybe it would actually have a more meaningful effect if you extracted the different maps and you could see them around there. Yeah, and the open world part just really excites me, man, because that's like where more gameplay, the gameplay loop gets bigger. I think I don't know, but anyways, sorry, I stole your thunder.
No, that's fine. No, I just think it's it's that it's just that restrictiveness of being able to go anywhere. I don't think the first iteration of it will be super restrictive either. It would be my impression because somebody actually in Discord sent me a really cool like mapping thing that they made. Um, and I could imagine it being as part of a kind of challenge that people do, you know, a hardcore challenge, but like with connecting maps kind of thing. It was actually a really neat little guide of, you know, you start in factory and then you can go to customs or
Yeah, yeah.
I can't remember where he said to woods or whatever. And but he had like a whole bunch of ones. It was like depending on which extract you took, you could use your hideout. Some you couldn't use the hideout. Some you had to replay the map.
Open world challenge, man.
But yeah, so it was like
Yeah,
open world challenge kind of thing. So some of them were like, you know, they're like the safe room on interchange. You could go there and exfil there, but you had to play interchange again, but you had to flip the time zone and stuff like this. As if like you were like waiting it out and then you like
that's
load
cool.
in again kind
Yeah,
of thing.
I
I was
dig
like, "That's
that.
kinda neat." So
Yeah,
there's a whole bunch of stuff like that that I was like, "Yeah, there's so many different extracts, and there's some that, you know, there's the underground bunkers for half of them and whatever." And I think there's really some fun stuff that can be done with those. And I think it'd just be nice to, you know, you go towards that area of the map, you say, "Well, I need to go to interchange, so I'm gonna extract on this side," and you infill from the side that you're supposed to infill on, rather than just being you just turn up at the map and you turn up from a random side. I think it would also help you plan as well because you kind of know which side you're going to turn up from based on your existing location. I hope that it's not. I hope that it's not too crazy. This is the thing. I want it to happen, but I don't want it to be like. And I know Nikita has said that this is a possibility for certain types of raids, which is fine if it's a little niche of things to do. If you want to get like the super top end, whatever you want to visit some special trader that sells RPGs, fine. But I don't want it to be like every raid to get anything sensible has to go through 3 maps and then back through 3 maps, and it's going to take 3 hours.
I get you.
I
Yeah,
actually don't want the game to be like that because I don't think they'll do that. But I think certain things will be like that, if you see what I mean. And I think with a good enough mix, I think it's okay because the average player doesn't need to access all of the like super top end stuff. Because I was actually just walking around today thinking about this and thinking about how the average player probably never even goes to labs, maybe like once or
yeah.
twice, but most the average player just never plays labs normally.
Mhm.
So it's like, you know, it's actually okay for the vast majority of the player base to not experience like the very top echelon of things, but to have those things available for the people who want to go and do them, like the big long 3 hour raids where you need to take a squad with you and it's really, you know, it's difficult to break in, whatever, but there's something crazy like RPGs or whatever, to go and do a specific thing. That stuff's really cool if it just exists in the game because then if you have the time, you can go and do it. But if you don't have the time, you don't want the whole game to be like that. You need it to be a bit more like it is now so that people can dive in, play a couple of raids and then bounce, you know. Um, so I hope that they put in a good mixture of stuff. But there's just so many possibilities for things. And somebody in chats just said like real quests, but like what we've spoken about before, you know, just making the game structure in that sense, you wouldn't really need as many quests per se because people would be
Yeah.
going to do stuff on their own, right? It's like the player
That's
driven story is like that's the deal. We've talked about that
I
so many times,
crave,
right?
man.
We've talked about that so many times. It's like every Rust video ever, right? Which is I don't know
Yeah.
whether that's actually talking about YouTube that you were talking about YouTube right at the beginning. I watched the Z Chums video because it was I think it was
Oh, yeah,
premiering
y
like when I
oh,
logged into
dude.
YouTube.
Yeah.
And so I actually watched that while it was premiering. But like all the Rust videos are awesome and they're basically where we want to get to in terms of Tarkov storytelling. Like obviously not mechanically, like completely different games, whatever, but it's very, very difficult to make that kind of video in Tarkov. It's hard, and it's not just about YouTube, right? It's just about the fact that it's very hard to have that experience in
Yes, that's the
Tarkov.
big thing. The ex
That's the
yeah.
thing. It's not about YouTube. It's not about content creation. It's about the experience, which enables the YouTube videos to happen. But it's the same thing with DayZ, right? It's like DayZ and Rust. You can have these big, long, drawn out stories, but in Tarkov, it's so hard right now with it being very raid specific, raid focused. There aren't enough sort of big, long, open-ended challenges that you can even challenge yourself with. Yeah, you could do snowball challenge and stuff like that, but the foundations aren't really there to create that experience right now. And I think that's what open world or at least connected maps would give the ability for because it means that because right now you can go to any map whenever you want except for labs which you have to pay 200k to get into, right? Whereas if you spread it out and you change it and you have it so that there are some locations that are disconnected from the main map
Mhm.
grid by 3 steps or something, and it's super hard at the end. That creates a thing to go and do, and people will go and do it of their own accord. You don't even need to put a quest in to go and do the thing. People will just go and do the thing. So
Dude, I
there's
was thinking
lots of
about
potential.
this, and this is maybe a horrible analogy, so bear with me, but, Rust and DayZ, they're kinda like a movie in the sense that take, for example, the Spider-Man, one movie, with, Tobey Maguire or, Sam Raimi, the one of the more classic ones, like, early 2000s. Tell me you know what I'm talking about, I'm not. With, the Green Goblin and, what's his name, dude? William Dafoe? Right?
I actually may not have seen it because I'm not a huge superheroes guy,
Okay.
and I'm also not a
Hey,
big
fair
movies guy.
enough, dude.
So,
Fair enough.
everybody on the planet seems to be a movies guy except for me, and I'm just like, "Am I the only one that doesn't watch that many films? No, just me? Okay, I'll be quiet."
Okay. We'll do this then instead to make it more relevant to you. Star Wars, okay? Like, the
Okay.
episode 4 or whatever. So, Daisy and Rust are kinda like that, right? You have different scenes, right? You have different characters that come in and maybe they introduce themselves and you get to learn about their backstory and then they go away and then they come back later and then they're relevant to
Mm,
the story. But there's like different scenes, different acts, right? Whereas Tarkov is like a single scene. You have a raid and you have a map and you have a story, right? And you may have some characters that come in, but they're never brought back in other scenes.
yeah.
And the stories are each scene is like individual on its own. Like there is a larger story, how I got a million rubles with Hamozin, for example, Tulu's video. But it's very hard to like have that. It's hard to do different types of stories or more advanced stories because your characters are limited because you can't actually interact with them in other scenes, other raids. Like
Mm,
and I don't know, it's weird. It's separated, but here's the great thing about Tarkov is I can take 30 minutes and have a short story, and when I log off, I know that my story is, like, untouched, whereas, like, in DayZ, dude, you log off and your story could change tomorrow morning, you know what I mean? And it's a much longer story, like, you gotta put a lot more time into it, but so there is, like and I think that's one of the things that makes Tarkov um very like approachable in some ways is that it's you can just sink 30 minutes into it
mm,
and you may be a really high intensity raid but once you're out of the raid whether you die or extracted it's like safe low intensity there's no, and that's nice so I think that there is like pros and cons to moving more towards open world, but I think, as you said, I think they're gonna find a really good balance because I really do think that there is something very good and approachable and, um, a larger audience can appreciate, um, having the on and off switch, if you will. You know what I
yeah.
mean?
Yeah, I do, yeah. I just it's funny, it's just like there's so many different ways it can go, and I don't even
Yeah,
know which way I want it to go,
I
There's, like,
know,
so
yeah.
much because the way that DayZ and Rust function is because all the bases are public effectively, right? So it's like
Yeah,
the major difference between the 3 games. The DayZ and Rust, the bases are open and public and can be raided, and Tarkov, your stash is sacrosanct, it's sacred
mhm,
and can't be touched by anybody else, and that fundamentally changes the structure of the way things work because then it means that Tarkov can be instance based rather than being server based, and that kind of thing, right? So you can
yeah,
then play with anybody. It's just like it's a completely the game structure is just totally different. So how you then transition that into its own set of story making, which is probably going to be unlike Daisy or Rust. It'll be different. But I don't know. Yeah, I just the only way that I think about it working in my head right now is, as I said, with places that feel because like right now everywhere feels safe in a sense, like what you're talking about, in that once you're out, that's it, you're out. Whereas in my mind, I've always imagined some areas to be further from like whatever civilization exists in Tarkov, but like further from that, right? You've got like the flea market, the traders, and your base, which is really what civilization means in EFT for us as players, anyway.
okay,
And to have maps that are further and closer from that is the way I imagine it in my head. So places being further away, being more dangerous, with more loot, more reward for more risk kind of thing.
So let
Because you
me
can't access your stuff necessarily. Like, you might actually have to, like, go and it's like some of the, I'm not an expert on this because I haven't been following the Evasion tournament, but I saw one of the qualifiers, like, you had to go and you basically had to do the guide, I think, but you had to do it with one loadout. So people were, like, bringing spare ammo and armor and, all sorts of stuff in their backpack. Like,
okay.
it'd be more like that, right? Where you have to because you can't access your stash necessarily once you've jumped away from your home map, all the traders, you have to be thinking about like 2 or 3 raids ahead and be like packing for
Yeah.
multiple
Yeah, I
raids.
get you.
You know, that
That's kinda cool.
that kind of thing. Yeah, that's kind of like in my head how I imagine it working. And then like when you get there, then maybe you can find like the top tier stuff. Yeah, people say like a dungeon. Yeah, kind of, yes. It's like it's much more like a dungeoning sort of roguelike kind of thing almost.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know. That's the way that I've got it envisaged in my head anyway. So you've got like, yeah, places that are
You
like close to your stuff and places that are further.
you could do, like, if you will, rat runs, right outside of your safe location,
Mm,
hideout, whatever, like, let's say it's customs. Or you could make the trip up to or down to Lighthouse, and then make the trip back to your safe zone, sort of like you ever play Darkest Dungeon?
no.
Okay, yeah, but I can see what you mean, like a roguelike thing. If you die, you could restart the journey, or you could just do some other thing somewhere else. Yeah, I could totally see something
Yeah.
like that.
Because I
So
could
you
imagine even a system where like you've not necessarily just got your hideout too. You can maybe have like your hideout and maybe you can actually build up like a series of stashes that are like between maps, right? So you
dude, it would be
originally there's nothing there
so
and you go,
cool.
okay, well you can if you get enough resources and you bring them to the exit, you could then permanently upgrade like your between map stash. So it's never going to be like your real stash, but you can keep some stuff there, some food
Yes,
resources,
it's
and
almost
you
like
could what
a secure container from point A to point B.
kind of yes, but then you could kind of you could stock up you could do those safe runs near your base and stock
Mhm.
up your stash with certain items for the longer run, right? So that you go, "Okay, fine, well,
Yeah,
I've stocked up my and now I feel safe going into the next map because 'cause I've got my stash back there that I can fall back to if I run out of things." And then from there, you kind of I don't know, you're kind of hopping your stuff across, like, your logistics almost further across the map. I don't know. It depends. But
that'd be
then
really
it gives
cool,
people stuff
man.
to upgrade. You've got like stashes to upgrade between different maps. There's like tons of money sinks, lots of things to it's not just your own hideout now. There's things out in the world that you can upgrade, like little secret areas that you can put cash into. And it could work similarly to the hideout itself, but just much smaller. That's the way I imagine that going. That's just how that's I
Yeah,
would like that, I think. I
so
would
you
like
could
that.
have,
I like
like
upgrading the hideout. I just like upgrading it.
your main hub, which is, like, your hideout, your big stash, and
Mm,
then in between all the maps, there's, like, a miniature stash space, and you could, like,
yeah.
store small amount of items, and you could basically, like, plan routes, like, "Oh, I'm gonna go reserve and get ammo and then put it in the stash that leads to woods," and then it's like, maybe 2 weeks comes by and you're like, "Oh, man, I really need ammo because 'cause I'm trying to go here. Oh, I could go to if I extract from woods, I can go to my stash in between reserve and woods and get this ammo that I put here 3 weeks ago." Yeah, dude,
Yeah.
that'd be like
And then what's this doing, right? This is you're already generating your own story just talking about it.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
this is the whole point. This is the whole point.
I don't know, dude.
I'm
I would
excited about it. It's great.
this is probably, like, not doable for many reasons, but I would love we talked about this before, but I would love to be able instead of having Jaeger caches, you can craft or buy or find a wooden cache or a
Mhm.
barrel cache, and you can plant it on the map, dude, and it's, like, there, and you could come back later and return to it, like, dude, that'd be so cool, man. Imagine you just, like, you're scurrying through a bush hiding from, like, a Chad, and then you just, like your little white dot pops up, you're like, "What? There's something here." It's a cache, and you open it up, and it's, like, food rations and slicks and ammo, you're like, "Oh my god, I gotta get out."
Yeah, I wonder how you'd make the visibility
It
work, but
it would it it's no.
it's too much. Yeah, it's
It's
too
it's a
much,
dream,
but
it's a dream.
it's cool to think about. It's cool
Yeah.
to think about. But I can see that. I can see that working. Like, I almost at one point, I was almost it was when I was thinking more about hardcore.
Mhm.
Because I didn't end up doing it just because I was like, I don't have enough time to do this, and it's sad because I really wanted to give it a go, and I still want to give it a go. But I had in my mind I was going to create this whole like similar to what we said before, the open world challenge thing, but have in my head almost like an Excel spreadsheet of just like, okay, how much stuff does it cost for me to upgrade like 5, 5 slots of like the
Yeah.
stash between customs and reserve and like just do it yourself. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like
yeah.
segregate your because if you got EOD, you got tons of space. So then just like use rubles to like segregate different areas. This is your main stash, is this little stash here.
Mhm,
Here's
mhm.
your other stash over here. It's going to cost this to upgrade it to 2 lines of 5 and 3 lines of 5 and 4 lines of 5. So make it really expensive to upgrade those stashes, you know?
Yeah.
That kind to like almost like build this infrastructure yourself to kind of play in and see what works and see what's fun and what's not, whatever. Because I quite like those. I like those things, right? Where it's
Eh
yeah, it's just it would be kind of cool. I was like I was so tempted, but then yeah, I just like I haven't had the time to play it and test it because it takes a long time to do anything like that. I mean, I guess you wouldn't necessarily even need to do hardcore. You could do like a lighter version based on what I was saying before, where you've got areas close to civilization and areas far
Mhm.
from civilization. Do it that way. Yeah, maybe. I'll have
You're
a think about it. I don't know.
you're reminding me of the open world challenge. So for those who don't know, one of my earlier projects was I deemed it the open world challenge, and I made it like 2 videos, maybe 3 videos, but it's basically what we're talking about. And I didn't have the idea of, intermediate stashes. I really like that. I'm trying to get Airwing to do something like this. Like, I'm trying to, like, nudge him, and now that we're talking, I'm, like, gonna, like, just shove him off the cliff and be like, "You're doing this." But anyways, because he's talked about doing, like, a raid series playthrough or hardcore playthrough or something. But anyways, um, yeah, dude, I remember, like, my god, I had, like it's such a time sink, and it's, like, really difficult because 'cause you're not playing on the even playing field as everyone else, but
Yeah.
super rewarding. Basically, I had traders on based off lore and, like, what made sense. I had traders on different parts of the map, and you had to go there, do their quest, turn it in, blah, 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 buy their stuff, take it back to your hideout, essentially. And you had to travel map to map. What we're talking about. I remember one is like, "Dude, I just need to get some basic guns so I can, like, just try to, like, survive when I'm leaving my hideout." So I made a trip from factory to reserve, extracted from the reserve, which will allow me to buy from Prapper because that's where I put him. So I had my backpack full of SKSs, like 3 SKSs and some random junk. Going back to factory, made it, finally made it. I'm like, thank God, dude, I got these 3 SKSs I can finally use. And then I use them all up and I die and I'm back to 0. But you know what? It was such a fun story to go through. Like, dude, I was sweating my balls off inside, reserve because there was, like, a fight going on. I was third party. I managed to kill the
Uh,
guy with a shotgun that I'd, like, off a scav or something. It was just like, yeah,
yeah.
such a never forget that. Such a great time. But,
Ah, man, this is also why, like, I do genuinely think that the game I really do think that the game could do with 2 different versions, and people or every time I bring this up,
yeah,
people accuse me of splitting the player base, but I really feel that the original when you first play EFT, that's its own very special thing, right? What do you
sorry, I'm
you
dying of thirst, so I gotta get something. Okay,
so
yeah.
just
It's your
rummaging around in the
yeah.
background?
It's its own special
No,
thing.
so
Go on.
when you play EFT for the very first time, right, it's a
Mhm.
special thing, and your
Yeah,
first wipe and even kinda your second wipe, but mainly your first wipe is like it's a special thing, and the game is incredibly hard when you first start
yeah,
playing it. After you've played it for a while, the ordinary game feels fairly straightforward. Once you know the mechanisms and the pathways and you know how to build your stuff up, right? The game, I wouldn't say the game feels easy necessarily, but the meta game feels easy. I think that's the best way that I would describe it. Because
and
originally the meta game just feels impossible because you don't know where the items are. The maps feel barren because you don't know anything about hidden caches. To be fair, they didn't exist when I started playing, but you don't know anything about where any of the items are, what the loot boxes look like how you level the traders up properly, how the quests actually get done, like where they are, how any of the attachments work, the modding, the ammo, everything. Like it's just too much. It's way too much. So you just the first wipe is just like hell. Whereas
yeah,
now when we jump back in, it's like the game's not necessarily easy, right? The gunfights are still punishing and difficult, and the game's hard in that
yeah.
sense. But that's what I mean. Like the the bigger game outside of each individual raid is so much more straightforward when you know what you're doing, right?
The game
And
of
that's why, yeah,
understanding the game is easy. Yeah,
exactly,
I get you.
exactly, and, like,
I get
how to make money, like, what's the easiest way to
right.
level up your stuff and, like, actually to accelerate up through the traders and that kind of thing. But that process becomes much more straightforward once you've played, like, 3, 4 wipes. You kinda know the deal then. You know what you need to do.
Yep.
You just have to go and do it.
Yep.
And that's the point at which I really do think that the game needs 2 different versions. One which is more like an actual, like, hardcore mode and one which is the regular mode, because regular players will still get a good 500 hours out of Tarkov before understanding it properly, which is fine. But I really think that people who've been playing for longer, I do think that there would be a desire to play one of these like harder versions of the game. And I know it's kind of coming, but I was just trying to imagine like how that's going to work now, because you're describing a situation which, if everyone's on the even playing field, it makes that kind of fun, right? Where like getting back to your stash with 3 SKS is a big achievement. Where running into someone with a modded M4 is actually really not common. That is the game that I think a lot of people would prefer to play, but something closer to that than what it is now. But I don't think you can make the whole game. I just don't think they're ever going to do it. I don't think they ever want to split the game like this. But the problem is that you can't make the game like that 3SKS game without making it impossible to play as a new player.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, basically, what we're asking for in a sense is, or what we're saying is, the game is as not intense as it used to be for me,
Hmm,
right?
yeah,
And the intensity was horrible, but it was also what made it so compelling. So, can we make the game more intense for me?
yeah,
And the effect of that is that it affects everyone, right?
hmm,
Now, there's another thing you're saying where the metagame, I've solved the metagame, right? And you want a new version of the game. So there's a new challenge, but there's also a new metagame to play. Essentially, like
yeah,
you've solved the best way to play Tarkov on standard. Now the hardcore, what's the what there's going to be a new strategy because the rules have changed, right? And that's like where it reminds me of Dota 2, and what one of the greatest things about playing a game like Dota 2 was is that every year or every 6 months there's a new patch, and one of those two patches there was some major changes, and it just completely shook the meta, and it was like
mm,
waking up Christmas morning, you know what I mean? It was like a completely new thing to unravel and figure out what's inside and learn how to play the game the most effective. And that's like the great thing about Inertia was that it did change the meta up a lot. But to sort of like package this all together, um, as far as like splitting the player base, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, or maybe it's indifferent because I think of like Daisy and Rust, and they have private servers, and a lot of these
yeah,
servers are modded, and they're essentially different rule sets. So like you have vanilla Daisy, which is as the devs designed it, I guess you could say, and then you have like a
hmm,
modded Daisy version. Or I'm more familiar with Rust, so I have to use Rust. But like vanilla Rust, you take a rock, you hit a tree, you get like 25 wood, and you need like 1,000 wood to make a tool cupboard or to put tools in essentially. Whereas in modded, you take a rock, you hit a tree, and you get 1,000,000 pieces of wood, and it's like they have like a multi in the server name, they'll be like, modded Rust X 1,000, and so like everything you hit gives you 1,000 quantity. So you're basically like, there's some servers, man, where it's like, you know what, we're just gonna give you. You don't have to work for anything. Like you just get an AK, you get armor. Like you just literally type a command like exclamation mark kit AK, and you just like boom, you got. And it's like, yeah, they just like, let's screw all this like working for stuff. Just shoot things. So it's kind of nice because you as the player, you have all these options and you may
mm,
find something you like. Like maybe you like vanilla, maybe you like just slightly modded, maybe you like extremely modded. Like there's so many things. So it's like, it splits the player base in a sense. But what we're really saying is, if you take 100 players, or if you take 30 players and you have to fill a map out with 15 of them, right? Well, let's take that same scenario and say you have 2 different game modes. Well, now you have and we'll say half the players went to this game mode, half the players went to the other game mode, but now you also have the same 2 maps now. So you have less players, I guess. So, like, you would have 7.5 players on one map and 7.5 players on the, you know what I mean? Like, I'm
Mm,
really messing up what I'm trying to say here, but I guess that's the question is, if you split the player base like this, so let's say it's split right down the middle, half the people went hardcore, half the people went the regular, would you have dead lobbies more often? Would you have like, is that kind of the fear of splitting the player base? Like, what is it?
I think so. I think
Yeah,
that's what people are concerned about, but, whenever this kind of thing is brought up anyway, I mean, yeah, I don't know, it's a weird one because I do wonder about, like, the dead lobbies and that kind of thing. Because you do wonder, especially what you're saying about how these games that are I mean, I can't imagine that DayZ I mean, I don't know what the player base of Rust looks like on a day-to-day basis, but I can't
mhm,
imagine it's in regular times, I can't imagine it's that much more than EFT. And if you've got different servers all over the place, like I can't imagine that given that players I know they play regionally, but most people tend to play on most servers within their region.
yeah,
I find it hard to believe that you'd struggle to fill the raids in enough time if you're playing regular matches. Like, yeah, Night Factory might have a problem if it's early wipe and there's less people playing or something, but we already have the player base split amongst all the different maps to begin with. So using that argument, you wouldn't want to add any more maps. So I don't know, it's a tricky one, but I just think from that aside, I just really do think that because that would be an extreme extension. I mean, it doesn't even need to be hardcore. I'm just saying hardcore as kind of an example, but
sure.
to make the game harder
Mhm,
to do the various things that we have to do and to make the traders difficult to reach so they're not just like live in your house and just give you attachments,
mhm,
that kind of thing. I really do think that the vast majority of the veteran player base would like that. Maybe they wouldn't, maybe I'm wrong, but I think there's a definitely a non-zero number of people that would like to play that game, and it would extend it out. And so it's one of those things of you already know broadly the meta game of Tarkov and how the overarching game functions or whatever. But now it's like now you're going to play the really difficult version where you have to use all of that knowledge in order to win, kind of almost against all odds. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
and sometimes it's going to be misery, but I think a game mode like that would be good. I really do think it would be cool. I really do. I know that Pesty was talking before about a hardcore server, a dedicated hardcore server that was
yeah,
going to run for like a week or
interesting.
two, but I don't know what happened with that. Yeah, it all went a bit quiet. And I think somebody asked him and he said, "Oh yeah, this is like kind of hand wavy about it, I think." I don't officially know where that went.
Hmm,
It's interesting. I must look that up because I was actually super interested. I would have loved to have played that. Would have loved to play that, and just to see how everyone else plays, like how it functions, would have just been so
yeah,
interesting to see.
yeah,
Because it could have just been misery and just not fun. It's
sure.
distinctly possible that it might just not be fun, and that's
Mhm,
that. But I do, I do miss those early days of the wipe in that sense, in that you're trying to like piece stuff together from. I just think the stuff's too accessible from the traders. I don't really mind the traders. I just there's no work that you have to complete to actually get this. The once you've put in the work to get the
the
quests done,
linear progression,
then
yeah.
there's no work to be done after that, and stuff just flows in. The attachments are just there, and that doesn't feel rewarding just to buy you things. It feels rewarding to go and obtain them or get them from quest rewards, actually do something. So it doesn't need to be fully hardcore, but I just think a different version that mirrors your 3 SKSs from reserve feeling
Yeah,
for experienced players would be something great. And I think a lot of the player base of EFT is experienced players. We do get new players in every wipe. I think Airwing actually just did a poll. Actually, no,
yeah,
was it Airwing? Oh no, he did a levels poll. He did a
yeah,
levels poll. There
levels
was
full.
one from I think it was Craned. I'm maybe mispronouncing his name. He's the guy who does like Tarkov tips on Twitter, and he makes the
Oh, yeah, yes,
really
yeah,
nice graphics. And
yeah,
he put a poll up on Twitter. me see if I can find it. I thought it was very recent. I clicked on it, so I don't know where it's gone. Oh, here it is. So how long have you been playing Escape from Tarkov? Now I don't know how far and wide this has gone, but yeah, it's got like 2,300 votes. So there's 21% my first wipe, 18% second wipe, 28% third wipe, and 32% 4+ wipes. So a good third of the player base has been around for a long time.
Mm.
And even if you had a third of the player base playing it versus two-thirds playing standard, like I would think that would be enough. That would be enough people, you would have thought, who are playing this enhanced difficulty edition effectively, which is harder and more punishing, and
Yeah, I
attachments
mean,
are harder to get
it's
access to, and that kind of thing. I think it'd be kind of neat.
yeah, I think so. I just don't know what the right call is because I try to think about in BSG shoes, like what do they really gain by doing this? And customer satisfaction for a small percentage of the customers' place, It's just like I don't
Well, is it a
know.
small percentage? I'm not sure. It's almost like
That's the
New
thing. I
Game
don't know.
Plus. This is the
Yes.
thing. It's like you finish the game and then you play right. Maybe you have to play through the first game first. So you
Hmm.
play through standard. You have to escape. Then you can play. Then you can switch over to hardcore afterwards. I mean, the first person to do it obviously is never going to be able to play at all. So
But
that's
then
kind
you
of
need, yeah, that's the thing. You need the other people in there. I don't know.
yeah, exactly. So I don't know. Oh, dude, how about this?
Okay.
Oh no, this is genius. Global quest.
Global quest.
You need a
Okay.
certain number of people to escape from Tarkov before it unlocks for the global community. How about that?
You mean just for standard or
So, like,
just
so once
just
enough people, like, once 1.0 is released or whatever,
okay.
once it, you have to play through da da da, and you have to actually do the escape from Tarkov, the real escape from Tarkov, which Nikito says can be really hard. Not everyone's gonna be able to do it. Blah blah blah. Once a certain number of people manage to achieve that escape from Tarkov, it unlocks globally the hardcore server for anyone who wants to play it afterwards.
Okay.
So there's a minimum number of players. Then it opens
That's
up.
that's interesting. Wonder if people would like gamify it and be like, "Bro, come on, get the pocket watch." Uh-oh.
Now we're good.
I wonder if people would gamify it and be like, "Bro, come on, get the pocket watch."
Yeah.
You need a minute?
No, 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 we're
You're
good. We're
fine.
good. We're good.
Sure? Okay.
Yeah, yeah, we're fine.
Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
no, that would be quite
I don't
funny.
know.
That would be quite funny, especially just like restarting. But I don't know. That I think that'd be kind of cool.
I don't know, man. That's a tough one. May have to come back and revisit it because I've like changed a lot of my opinions and thoughts on things around like secure container, which just comes down to a thing of I'm saying that I figured out the meta. It's not as intense for me. Can we change this so the game can be more intense for me? And it's like, let's say 1% of the player base like hatchet runs, and that's like the only way they can play the game. Like some extreme example. Do I really want to like rub out the 1% so that I can have a better experience? Or maybe I could argue that the whole game could be a better experience. Like I don't know. That's a tough thing to really think about. So kind of in line with like, but see, that's the thing when you have two modes and you're not really like rubbing out someone. You're almost like having a competition. Like let's say that you're or yeah, let's say you're right in that people actually prefer the hardcore mode. So it's like, yeah, they're almost like competing against each other in a sense. You know what I mean? It's not like because if you have one mode, then you can't have that particular experience of the other mode because it got deleted. You know what I mean? So it's like the
Mm.
people that maybe are like, I liked how this used to be. So many parallels coming in. I don't like it. But
Yeah,
anywho,
it would just be kind of interesting because also then it would almost be self-selecting as well because you would kind of like it's not it's sort of almost skill-based matchmaking by choice
hmm,
because people who are still new would probably still play standard and stuff, not the super hard one, and then you'd end up playing against more experienced players playing the harder version too. So it'd kind of separate the player base into those two
yeah,
things too.
that's an
Yeah,
interest. Yeah,
yeah, Might
I
actually
th
make it easier in the base
I think
game.
it's sounds like a pretty legit thing, dude. Like, it
Yeah, I don't think they'll do it, but I don't know.
who knows?
Could
Who
be.
knows?
Could be.
Well, I think we'll wrap it up there. I think next week, maybe, depending on what the news looks like, we'll talk about some RMT stuff. 'Cause I
Okay.
know I leaked that last week, but this week we had Twitter drama to cover. I mean, come on, guys. You can't not cover the Twitter drama. So, cool. Any closing thoughts, Kiko?
Not too much. Not too much actually. Yeah, I think I pretty much said everything that I wanted to talk about. So yeah, no, I think really that's it. That's kind of like just neatly rounds off my thoughts, what we've been up to, and that kind of thing. I was going to talk about some zeroing stuff, but got a video coming out on that, so you guys can watch that. Maybe we talk about that next time, depending
Yeah, maybe
on
we can talk
kind of
about
the
next
feedback.
time.
So yeah,
Cool. Well, guys, thanks for tuning in as always, and hopefully we'll have some more exciting stuff to talk about in the future as far as new Tarkov content. I'm eager to see what BSG is picking up in the pot and what they're going to come out with. So look forward to that, and we'll catch you next week.
catch you later. Bye.